Hey, this is Man-Made Mead. Today we are doing the May Monthly Mead. Lots of M's. We are going to do ultimately Blood Orange Mead. Now I did the March Monthly Mead was an orange mead. This is a little different. This is just a blood orange. I'm going to use up here, I'm using Black Gum Tupelo Honey. Tupelo, however you say it. This is 3 pounds, and I will use all of it for this mead. I will add the blood orange into the secondary fermentation after the primary has first gone through. I will be using the Lavlin K1 V1116 yeast, because I think that while the beginning of this mead is going to be a traditional mead, when I start to add in the blood orange, that's when it will start. The yeast will do better with that fruit. As always, I like to use Fermade K and Go Firm Protect along with my mead, because these things help the yeast stay energized and get all those things done. So, as always, the steps are: you first need to, when making a mead, you need to get your yeast started. It takes the longest portion. After the yeast, or while the yeast is going, or is getting hydrated, excuse me, you can start to mix your honey and your water together. And I have a 1 gallon portion of water right now. It's purified water. Okay, so you're going to get your must going, honey in your water, and while the yeast is going. And then once that is done, generally you'll finish quick enough to where you'll wait for a few minutes on your yeast. And then the third step is to put them all together. And when you put them all together, you want to acclimate everything. So we'll go through, I'll talk more as we go along. But first things first, get the yeast started. So first things first, let's get a little water going. The back of our yeast packet says to hydrate the yeast at about 109 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit this kind of on a medium temperature, use my thermometer to check in a little bit to see about 109. And the goal when hydrating yeast is to keep them at that temperature the entire time they're hydrating, which is about 25 to 30 minutes. So that's your goal. Now the way you can do it is you can use a stove, turn your heat on real low, and then you can watch it. You can also, I've done it before where if you leave it in the microwave, sometimes the heat doesn't escape as quickly, but anything you can do to get it to stay at 109 degrees. Okay, so that water is going. In just a moment, I'll check it again, and we will see if it's at 109 degrees. So in 1 moment. Okay, so now our water has reached 109 degrees, so I'm going to go ahead and pitch my yeast into here. And a lot of people will say, you know, we'll stir the yeast in. When I first started, I would stir the yeast in. I've started to just let the yeast sit up here like this without stirring, because they'll naturally kind of go down into the water. Alongside this, I'm going to start a timer for 30 minutes. And then I need to put in my Fermade K and my Go Firm. So with the Fermade K, you're only going to use 1 gram per 1 gallon of water. So I only need 1 gram. Not a lot, just a little bit. So let me get that. All right, here is our Fermade K. We're going to put that in there. Now we're also going to get our Go Firm. Go Firm is a little more. You need 1.25 grams per 1 gram of yeast. So I need 6 grams of this. So just a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. All right. With those in there, just to explain real fast, Go Firm is helpful for rehydrating these properly. It gives them more nutrients into their cells, which allows them to properly and more easily kind of work their way through the must as they get involved with it. Same thing, same idea for the Fermade K. This is also full of micronutrients, and this is great for helping those yeast. And whenever you introduce it into this form, what you're doing is you're allowing for it, the yeast, as they rehydrate, to also soak in all those nutrients. Okay? Now, like I said, 109 degrees. We're gonna keep it at that. So what I'm gonna do, rather than stir it around, I don't wanna stir it around yet, I'm gonna put it back here. I'm gonna turn this on to low, and I want to make sure that it doesn't sit or get above 109. So I will watch that as it's going along. Right now it is sitting at, it's probably dropped just a little bit since we are at about 100 and still 109, which is great. So I can actually turn off this heat for the moment so it doesn't get too much hotter, and I will turn it back on in a second and just be low. Okay, wow. While this is going, our timer is set for 30 minutes. Let's get our must going. All right, so this is sanitized. I always sanitize everything before I go. I just do it as a standard. I don't do it on camera anymore because you do it so often. So now we're gonna open up our honey. This is Tupelo honey, like I said, and it is black gum. So I think, I've never tried this honey, and I'm curious to see kind of what it's like. Normally I would mix all of this inside of a carboy. However, I don't have a carboy now. So what I'm gonna do instead is, I'm actually just going to stir it the old way. So I'm gonna put some water in first, and you can heat your water up. You can keep it room temperature, whatever you like to do works. So we're gonna put water in. Okay. That's our water. Now we're just gonna dump this straight in. One other thing that helps with stirring it this way is you're aerating the must. You have to aerate your must so that the oxygen gets into it, and then your yeast have something to hold on to as they're going along. So you can stir vigorously at this point, and I would, and I'm gonna do that now. Stir pretty vigorous so I mix everything well, and then also so that I also get that oxygen in, part of my oxygen in. Alright, now that this has been going, what I'm going to do is I would normally wait to start using my aerator, but I'm going to go ahead and put my aerator in so the must is getting oxygen, and then wait for my yeast. Once my yeast is done, I'll pitch my yeast water into this, and then this part's done because we're not going to add the blood orange quite yet. So let me get my aerator. Alright, this is a handy little tool. It just pumps oxygen straight into the mead. So don't have to work too hard. This is oxygen stone. Put it in, and suddenly now, I'm doing this early because I want to try and get as much oxygen into the must as possible. I'm gonna leave that going. I'll be back in a few minutes to check and make sure the yeast is great. Okay, so our yeast water has sat for 30 minutes. We are ready to start acclimating it. We want to acclimate it before we just throw it in. So first things first, let me get a little bit of our must water and mix it in. Okay, so I've done a video about acclimating yeast before, but just to synopsize all of that information, the reason you actually acclimate them is to get them to the right temperature, so when you combine them with the must, they're ready to be at the same temperature. But also, so you can give the yeast the idea of what they're about to jump into. So the gravity change, the temperature change, all of it, sugar content, it's very, very different from the must to the yeast water. So let that set for a second. Once it gets closer to our room temperature, which our room temperature right now is about 74 degrees, I will start to add it in. So I'll add a little more must water here in a second. Okay, so it's been a second. I'm gonna add a little more must water. Further acclimate. We are down to, let's see what our temperature is at. We're down to 78 degrees, which is great. That is our perfect time to introduce it. So now I'm gonna pitch this into the must. Let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so this is all mixed in. I'm gonna lightly stir here, and then I'll put my aerator back in. One thing I do wanna do before I move on is take a gravity reading, a first gravity reading of this. So let me stir for a second, and then I will get the gravity reading going. Okay, time to take our first gravity reading. Gravity reading just tells us kind of what the sugar content and everything, and the way water is generally it's about 1.00. So when you add your other ingredients, you will start to add to the density of the water. So the density of the water now, or the gravity of the water, using my hydrometer, is 1.07. 1.07, which means that ultimately, if the yeast do all of their job perfectly, we could be sitting at about a 9.1 ABV. Now that's before the blood orange gets involved too. One thing I find interesting about this, if you look at the color of the must, it is way lighter. It looks kind of like my lemon lime mead, but it's not. It's a little different. So now I'm gonna go ahead and pour this back in and then close it up. Okay, so I've closed it off. Right now it's gonna sit, the lid isn't fully closed because the aerator is still going on. It's gonna do that for another 30 to 45 minutes just to get more oxygen into the mead, and then it'll be ready to close up. Now, this is gonna be a traditional mead right now because it's going through primary fermentation. Once I get into secondary, I'm going to separate off about a quarter of it and just use it as a traditional mead, just to try and see how that ages with the Tupelo honey. And then the other 3/4, I'm going to add this blood orange into. So this blood orange will be, it has its own gravity, all these things. So my gravity reading is going to be different again whenever I go back and I actually add it inside of everything. So if you want to know what I put in this mead, I'll tell you right here. This is all the stuff I've put in this mead, and I'm going to put in this mead. I highly encourage you to try things. I love trying different meads, drinking, and then also actually making meads. I have a bunch of new videos coming out soon, so stay tuned for a bottling video, as well as a kind of a super secret video I want to get done soon that'll hopefully be fun. It's not a lot of me talking. I will say that it is a lot of trying. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment, leave a like, leave subscribe. Just leave your feedback. I'd love to hear from you guys, good or bad. It's so fun to take your criticism, take your feedback, and see how I can apply it into my process. So thanks for watching, and see you guys next time. Cheers.